We run our moderate framed cow herd somewhere between 4.5 5 framed cows. We want them to wean roughly between 50 and 60% of their body weight and do it on grass.
What we're trying to do here is to develop a type of beef animal that will thrive in a harsh environment. If it can thrive here, it can thrive anywhere.
Welcome to The American Rancher. I'm Pam Minnick. Today's show takes us to the Nebraska Sandhills. We'll visit Spring Valley Ranch and Cattle not far from the community of Bassett, where we'll see a forage-based Angus operation with a notable heritage. Spring Valley Ranch and Cattle is owned by Frank Taylor and family and is managed by Ben and Sherry Andrews. For more than 10 years, the operation has been developing superb Angus cattle that are range-raised and thrive on low inputs. The Sandhills country where the ranch sits has a tremendous legacy as well. And we'll visit with Mr. Ben Borger, who ranched this same land for years, and learn about his ancestors who settled here more than 125 years ago. We've got an excellent ranch history and forage-based Angus story from the Nebraska Sandhills for you. We're glad you joined us. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The American Rancher. Spring Valley Cattle is a forage-based seed stock operation designed to produce Angus cattle that meet the needs of today's beef producer. These are cattle that they coin as timeless genetics that thrive on low inputs and bring forth the needful traits of fertility, structural soundness, and fleshing ability. Spring Valley Ranch and Cattle is also a place where conservation and history are highly valued, and the work of previous generations is celebrated. Frank Taylor grew up in the farm country of the Midwest, where he learned the wholesome values of hard work and earnestness. He became an attorney and made a distinguished career, and over time he yearned to return to the ranch country of the Northern Plains and contribute to that lifestyle that had helped mold him. Frank Taylor found the ranch he was looking for in the Nebraska Sandhills. He loves the land there as much as the specific type of cattle that he is raising. Noting from others that there was a desire for a source of a more traditional Angus animal back into the market, he founded Spring Valley Ranch and Cattle to accomplish that goal. Spring Valley Ranch blends the timeless genetics of emulation, Rito, Shoshone, Traveler, and Y to produce Angus cattle that meet the needs of today's producer.
I started my career in Omaha, tried a lot of cases in the Sandhills, and grew to love the Sandhills. We had a farm in southeastern Iowa, so I started in ag. My grandparents had it, my aunt, my mother had it. I continue to farm in southeastern Iowa. But I loved the Sandhills. And it took me about 25 years to find a ranch that I really liked. And this was it, because it had what I call good balance. It had shelter, it had good water. It had a good balance between the meadows as well as the hills where they pasture in the summer. And it's beautiful. It just is very, very beautiful.
Spring Valley Ranch and Cattle has a fascinating history that goes back generations. What existed in previous days of this country were the pioneers and the people who settled the Sandhills and the cattle. Frank Taylor and family bought the ranch from Ben Borger and his family. Ben's family lived on and operated the ranch for 125 years.
My grandma run the land, and Dad run the land, and then when I fell heir to it, well, I was the fourth generation. And I just like the ranch. The ranch was in my blood, and so a lot of sentimental value here. I had to do a lot of thinking before I put it up for sale. You know, you got to take care of your land, because land is what takes care of the cattle, and that's what you sell is the cattle off of this land. And if you overgraze it, why, it don't produce very good. And the wet meadows that we had, why, we fertilized them like every 2 years or 3 years. And we never did overgraze them. We let the cattle run on and afterward getting the hay put up. And you got to take care of that land too. And we raised 2 girls down here and went to school, and One of the girls was valedictorian in high school, and the other one was salutatorian. So felt pretty good about that.
Ben's grandmother came to the United States from Germany in the 1880s. She traveled by train to Kearney, Nebraska. From Kearney, she walked 135 miles as the crow flies to the ranch where she staked her claims under the Kincaid Act and the tree claim laws.
The way they got their land back then, they could homestead some land, and they had a Kincaid Act, they called it, and they had a tree claim. So in order to get that land, they had to plant some trees, and she did that. And the way they got those trees, she'd hook up a team of horses to a wagon, and they'd go to the Niobrara River, because those trees grew along the Niobrara River, and that is 30 miles north of here. And she pulled those saplings up, and then she planted those trees, and a lot of those trees was ash trees, and that's a hardwood tree. And those trees that she planted, they used to use them for make corrals out of, and they used to use the smaller limbs for handles for their shovels and rakes or all that kind of everything. Because they never had no place to go to buy them, they had to make everything. Granddad died after the last baby, so Grandma had to hold this land together with her and just the kids. She was a strong pioneer woman.
Ben's grandfather came to the United States from Germany as well. At that time, Germany was conscripting young men into the German army. To avoid conscription, his auntie hid him in a steamer trunk. When the authorities began to search steamer trunks, his auntie took him from the steamer trunk and hid him under her hoop skirt.
So that's the way he got to America. Those guys wanted to come to America awful bad to do something like that. And he got the Granddad on a train, and when they let him off at the depot, they had a plat map on the wall there. And he figured out if he could follow these rivers up here, he could get to where this ground was to be homesteaded. Now you got to remember, when he walked up here, and he walked from Grand Island up here, there's 129 miles to where we're sitting right here. And when he walked up here, there was Indians up here. So you knew he had to walk through the Indians and everything, so he probably had his life threatened a time or two of getting here. So he wanted some land pretty bad to get up here. They must have had ranching in their mind, because that's what they want to do, is run some cattle up here.
Ben's grandmother took chickens, eggs, cream, butter, and other production by buckboard to the train station in Long Pine twice a week to provide food for the Chicago Northwestern passenger trains.
Back then, they raised everything. About all they bought was like coffee and sugar and flour and the vitals they needed in the kitchen. But they had lanterns to work by, and they didn't have no electricity, of course. And so they were true pioneers when they lived here.
It is important to Frank Taylor and family that the history of the ranch, the pioneers, and the Sandhills way of life is preserved for generations to come. The Sandhills are beautiful, harsh, and remote. The people who settled them were tough and true pioneers, worthy of recognition.
I went to school at Duff. That's 1.5 miles from here. Dad would take us to school in the morning, and then we'd walk home every night. And that's when we had wide enough desks that two kids could sit at the desk. My mother was a teacher there, and that's how she met Dad, because Dad lived just across the road from the schoolhouse down there. And Mom taught school there, so that's how she got acquainted with Dad. My grandma, Emma Berger, was a midwife at her house down there, and she talked about helping deliver 60-some babies here. And she also had a lot of funerals in her house. And then Grandma donated an acre of ground for a cemetery. It'd be 1 mile straight north, and that's up there by Duff. That's where the homestead is, right by there. And to this day, I still see my grandma walking up there. She'd plant flowers where Gustav was buried. My grandpa and her husband was buried. And she'd plant flowers up there, and then I could see her carrying water up there. And she planted 2 trees there when he was buried. And Dad and I always had to trim those trees so they looked nice for Memorial Day.
We, I think, are doing a good job with the ranch. And one of the highest compliments that I've ever received is when Mr. Berger said that he feels that his ranch is in good hands and that it's developed. My job it seems to me, is to constantly improve the land and the cattle. I bought this ranch for my children. And it's something that we can all build upon, and then they can give it to their children. And you learn that you derive benefit from hard work. And hopefully, as Ben did with his family, and his family did for him, we can impart that same work ethic into our children. And if we've done that, we've left the world a better place.
This place is managed real well. In fact, when Frank got ready to build a house out here, well, he wanted me to pick out a place for him to build a house. And I said to him, I said, well, Frank, you own this land now, not me. So I said, well, I'll pick out a place, but I won't tell you. So he picked out a place, and I picked out a place. And lo and behold, why, we picked out this spot. Same place.
As a condition of settling, the Berger family hauled trees by wagon from the Niobrara River to plant on the home place near the present-day community of Rose, Nebraska. It was a 3 or 4 day task through open prairie. The family ancestors of Ben Berger had a hunger for the freedom and opportunity of owning land to build a way of life which America offered. When we return, we'll look further into the Spring Valley Ranch and Cattle program. This is The American Rancher. Stay with us. Welcome back to The American Rancher. Spring Valley Ranch and Cattle has been called the mother church of low input, superior seed stock for the commercial and registered cattlemen. Frank Taylor and Ben Andrews have taken time to develop easy fleshing, forage-based Angus genetics that will deliver carcass quality in forage-based, grass-finished, or traditional feedlot programs. The Spring Valley Ranch cattle are rotated through the hills and the meadows. The ranch sits on the Ogallala Aquifer. The cattle spend the 5 summer months, May 15th or so through October 15th, in the hills. The hills are cooler and have good grass coverage. The sand hills are just that, large rolling hills of sand that are covered by a mixture of warm season and cool season grasses. From October 15th until May, the cattle graze the meadows and are fed hay cut from the meadows in late July to mid-August. The meadows are sub-irrigated from the Ogallala Aquifer, which is vitally important to ranchers as the area receives about 20 inches of rainfall per year. The ranch is operated in a self-sustaining manner. Calving occurs in the spring. They are weaned and sold in the fall. Spring Valley Ranch and Cattle is managed by Ben and Sherry Andrews.
Well, luckily Ben Berger, he had cross-fenced this ranch, got it from sections down to half sections. And then Frank came in, was able to pipeline the place and get water concentration into different locations. From there, by having these pastures broke down into smaller areas, we were able to increase the number of cattle per pasture, which then allows us in different times of the year to graze differently to where we can get more hoof action, more compaction on some of that soil to where we can prevent some of those blowouts from occurring. We're moving about every 2.5 to 3.5 weeks. Probably some of the best cattle country in the world when managed correctly.
When Ben and I came here, it was only us, and we had a hard time moving the cattle just because we have like 400 cows and just the 2 of us. And we got a border collie the January that we moved here. Now we have quite a few dogs, and we use them almost every day. They ride with, they're like our kids. They have to understand that you're the pack leader is the main thing. They have to want to please you and do the things that you want them to do.
We try to use the best grazing techniques that we can to sustain the hills and improve the hills. We probably have increased the production in pastures by upwards to 30% through better grazing techniques. When I first bought the ranch, we put in 100,000 feet of water pipe so that we could have more water tanks. A mother cow doesn't want to walk more than a half mile from water, especially in summer. So if you've got good pasture that's a mile from the nearest tank, that pasture's not going to be used. So by combining with the existing windmills and the additional tanks as a whole, before grazing techniques, we improve capacity by 30%. And the cattle have to make it on grass. Some minerals, some salt. That's it.
Spring Valley Ranch and Cattle is a low-input, superior seed stock for the commercial and registered cattlemen. With the rising costs of operation, feed, fertilizer, fuel, and ranch land, Spring Valley Ranch and Cattle has taken a new approach to producing profitable, money-making Angus seed stock. It is a unique program that's been developed totally on forage, roughage, and grass.
We're using a combination of emulation Y, Rito/Traveler, line breeding intensely to where we can bring it into the main group. We run a moderate framed cow herd, somewhere between 4.5 5 framed cows. We want them to wean roughly between 50 and 60% of their body weight and do it on grass.
As one studies the bloodlines at Spring Valley, it is notable that the bulls are bred from generation after generation of ancestors of known low-input traits. It is the place to go for the commercial and registered cattleman who seeks to reduce costs while maintaining top quality.
Yeah, we have a spring bull sale in Burwell, Nebraska. We've had it on RFD TV the last year. We sell something a little different than a lot of guys. We sell aged bulls at 18 months, 2 years old. They're forage and grass developed. We've been happy with how they've gone. They've gotten better every year. Our average has gone up. I feel the quality of the bulls that we've been offering every year have gotten better.
What we're trying to do here is to develop a type of beef animal that will thrive in a harsh environment. If it can thrive here, it can thrive anywhere.
Spring Valley Ranch and Cattle cows must excel in tough range conditions. They must calve by themselves, produce calves with superior vigor, breed back in a timely fashion, and raise a big calf. There are no EPDs that measure these important traits, which impact the rancher's bottom line. The bulls from these cows embody these traits, which are proven for profitability.
We're an intense line bred deal, and we use probably 70% of our own sires that we've either raised or bought. And the reason we do that is because they're predictability. When we're breeding cattle, predictability and functionality is our main key traits. We want as consistent and profitable package as we can produce and pass on to the commercial producer.
Health consciousness. I live in Minneapolis, and the doctors, the restaurateurs, the grocers are all saying that the healthiest type of animal for protein is a grass-fed beef. High in omega-3s, high in vitamins, one of the few animals that has zinc. Very, very healthy and good for you. That's what we're trying to satisfy, and it's a great niche market. And I challenge people sometime to go to the East Coast and see what the price per pound is for grass-fed and finished beef. Healthy way to go and environmentally sound, and a lot of fun. The market is there, without a doubt. And the beauty of these animals is if the commercial cattleman doesn't want the grass-fed or finished animal as we're raising, these animals will also thrive in the commercial standard feedlot arena. I'm not saying that it's only grass-fed and finished here. If you don't want that, that's fine. These animals will do extraordinarily well in the standard commercial environment.
Spring Valley Ranch and Cattle genetics produce animals that thrive and are efficient in their range environment. Their commercial and registered animals flush easily and have high carcass quality in forage-fed, grass-finished, or traditional feedlot programs. They invite you to drop by for a visit and take a look at their timeless genetics for today's producer program.
I'm Frank Taylor from Spring Valley Ranch and Cattle. We raise registered Black Angus cattle that are line-bred, forage-based, efficient cattle that will put money into your pocket and from which you can enjoy heterosis. Stop by anytime. Give us a call at 402-684-8255 3308 and stop by for a cup of coffee. It's the best in the Sandhills.
Buyers, as a reminder, you can always watch, bid, and buy from any Superior auction online at superiorlivestock.com. It works fine. You won't miss a thing. Watch for the Spring Valley Ranch and Cattle Production Sale this coming February, brought to you by Superior Productions. With the rising cost of operation and production, Spring Valley Ranch and Cattle has built a source of profitable, range-developed Angus genetics that will put money in ranchers' pockets. These cattle are bred to work for you. Thanks to Frank Taylor and all our guests for bringing us today's story from the Nebraska Sandhills. We hope you enjoyed it as well. That's all the time we have. To find out more about us, visit our website, theamericanrancher.com, or friend us on Facebook the next time you're there. For The American Rancher, I'm Pam Minnick. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.